A beautiful Oscar aquarium is simply rarely possible until now. I got one. Today I'm going to introduce you to the new Oscar Aquarium. Located on the southeast wall of the aquarium gallery, this aquarium is 375 gallons. You actually might remember it. I built it in the old location. We used to have a garage right where we're sitting. We tore that down and I built up a whole new building dedicated to aquariums. The one in question is 8 feet long, 3 feet wide, and 2 feet tall. But I know what you're thinking. Joey, wasn't there other fish in there? What happened to the electric eel? What about the stingrays? Well, we've had to shuffle some fish around as of late. Because, you see, when it comes to owning lots of aquariums, especially big ones, lots of fish, especially big ones, sometimes their tanks or locations might not be the best suited for them. Sometimes we might have to move their locations. Bottom line is that we still have those fish, but this opened up the Oscar Aquarium, and I needed to move the Oscars anyways. So when the 375 gallon opened up, I decided I'm going to set up an Oscar aquarium in the image that I've always wanted. Have 8 Oscars in the aquarium. We have 4 tiger Oscars, 3 copper Oscars, and 1 albino Oscar. Now previously, the Asian arowana was beating them up, and they're so food aggressive that the Asian arowana really lost its appetite. So in moving them to this tank really helped out both fish. They're doing absolutely phenomenal. Before we move any further into the details on how we built all this, is we'll have to address the tigers first. Obviously, they're the biggest and baddest. I'd estimate them to be between 10 and 14 inches on average. Yes, Oscars get over a foot long. They can get up to 16 inches. They prove to be the most food aggressive and run the tank. Second in charge, believe it or not, is not the albino, who would be second biggest. It's actually the coppers. We have 3 of them. 2 of them are identical in size. We rescued them from a local fish store. And then we have 1 small one that was absolutely phenomenal, and we had to have it. It was only a couple inches in size when we got it, but now it's probably over 6 inches easily. When it comes to the coppers though, interesting things happen. The 2 bigger coppers, as you guys know, always stay together, swimming side by side, always find each other, stayed like a pair. I often wonder if they're a mated pair, but I suppose we'll find out in due time. But every once in a while they lose each other. And when that happens, the little copper slides in beside one of the lone bigger coppers and acts like I'm supposed to be here. And they swim around the aquarium just fine. Up until the bigger copper realizes, you're too little to be here, who are you? And it bites him away. The tiger Oscars stay together and the coppers tend to stay together, although the little one is kind of like the little annoying brother. They're all getting along besides the lone albino. He's always acting submissive, turning up on his side, showing his side. If you don't know, Oscars will show their sides when they're being submissive. If they're not, they'll come out with their mouth, looking to lip lock and or open their mouths as big as they can at each other, pushing each other around, and the albino is simply not doing as well as the rest. But we'll address that here shortly and how I'm going to fix that. And I think the way I'm going to fix it is going to make you really excited. With this scape, I decided that I want the gallery to be a vision that I've had for quite some time. And all of these tanks, when it comes to their scapes, must begin outside of the tank. If you don't remember, when I talked about having a wall of tanks, I thought maybe some of the scapes might come out of the tanks, but due to humidity. I realize that's not going to be practical, but that doesn't mean we still can't do it while having lids. For this, we took the old rocks from my wall logo, the King of DIY logo. We placed it above the tank and went down from there. We started placing vines and even a sign that says the King of DIY. Inside the aquarium, we have natural manzanita wood, which you guys might recognize from past videos. If you don't know, I don't throw my wood out. I have some of the best wood on the planet, and time and time again, I've taken you out back of my shed to show you such wood. So if some of the wood in this tank looks familiar, yes, I've had it for some time. Also, some fake rocks from Aqua Decor, and some silk plants that I just got at the craft store Michael's. I jammed some of the silk plants into the air holes of the rocks because they are hollow and they need to sink, so they need a hole to sink, and I jammed the plants into those holes and kind of pushed them down so they can still bubble up, but the plants are secure in case the Oscars, if you don't know, are going to rip them apart. And that's why we have silk plants. Oscars will rip your tank apart. A beautiful Oscar aquarium is simply rarely possible until now. I got one. We have a couple of different plants inside the tank. One is more fern looking. It looks like the ferns that grow back of my house, which I really like. They're so lush and have so much great foliage. And then there's a plant in the middle that wasn't really meant to go in the middle. I was just kind of putting things in and enjoying it and kind of looking at it. And however, that plant might come across as some sort of a Nubius, some variety of it, or maybe some sort of a sword or some other type of plant. And maybe it doesn't look like an aquatic plant at all, but in the aquarium it adds a little burst of difference from the other ferns. On the back, of course, is little sections of Aqua Decor backgrounds that get siliconed or magnetized to the back. I silicone them because, well, these Oscars will, well, because this aquarium is 3/4 inch thick, and I think those magnets are probably only rated for maybe a 1/2 inch. So I silicone them in place. The downside is it's tough to fill up all the gaps and still make it look good. So I did whatever looked most natural, and then of course, behind the aquarium, I used my oldest and cheapest do-it-yourself background of all time. Black garbage bags taped to the back. I know how bad that sounds, but if you do it right, it just blacks out the background. And in certain areas, in the gaps of the rocks, the garbage bag kind of crumpled up a little bit here and there, offering even more depth and more characteristics to the background. I absolutely love it. Then, of course, the substrate. Substrate is a fine gravel. I only added in about 40 pounds of it just to see what the Oscars would do. I think I will add a little bit more in, but this tank's been set up for over a month and they haven't touched it. I like this gravel with Oscars and with a lot of other fish because it's fine enough to not trap a lot of solid foods, but coarse enough to not create any sort of anaerobic regions within the aquarium. Overall, the scape is so simple, but it looks so dynamic and so exciting because of the equipment and lighting. We have to start with the lighting because that's why it looks so great and mysterious and interesting and fun and natural. We're using simple light cords that I got on Amazon for $3 a pop. They're 12 feet long and got a little switch on them. I put them on a timer so I don't even have to do that. Then I took a plastic flower pot, turned it upside down, drilled down into it, put the plug in on one side, and screwed in a basic 6500 Kelvin LED light bulb. I actually made a video on this before. It's elegant. I don't have a lot of light pour into the room, but the tank gets that shimmer, it gets that dynamic look, and depending on where I place them, if I bring the lights down a little further, I can get a spotlight effect. I bring them up a little higher, then I get the light pouring out throughout the aquarium. Bring them forward, I light the fish up better. I bring them backward, I light the background up better. I decided to simply place them in the middle, which is the most common and something I rarely do, but it looked the best on this aquarium. I find the water flow in this aquarium is also a reason why the Oscars are getting along so well. I like doing high flow tanks. I like circulation. I like filtration. I love water changes, and we're going to get to all of that. The filter on this tank, which is connected to a 700 gallon, a 2000, a 180, and a 180 gallon sump, is run by a sump below the tank. All the water's overflowing to the bottom sump, being mechanically and biologically filtered, and then being returned back to the aquarium at a rate just shy of around 3,000 gallons per hour through a 1-inch PVC pipe, which, if we look at it, it's not that dramatic looking. It's not that fast, it's not that gushing, because I want it to be slow. I even use the pipe that would come out further than the overflow just because I want it to kind of dump the water into the tank. Because I'm not going to use the return pump as the circulation. I'm going to use a circulation pump in order to do that, like a wave maker. The wave maker is attached to the overflow, undulating throughout the aquarium, making waves. Turns on, turns off, turns on, turns off, turns on, and that's where we get that wave action. It's pushing all of that circulated water throughout the aquarium, not only giving us a tremendous amount of surface area, but I love to lower the water level on my aquariums to see it. If you don't know me by now, I love to lower the water level below the trim by a couple of inches just so I can see the water movement. It's one of my favorite things about aquariums, unfortunately. Some of you like it, most of you hate it. And that pump, again, is pushing around 3,000 gallons per hour. So we have about 6,000 gallons of circulation within this aquarium. That's only 375 gallons, and it sounds like a lot, but it's not a jet. It's more of a push of water, circulating everything, moving things around, and I find it's diffusing a lot of aggression within the Oscars, which they seem to be far more happier in this aquarium than any aquarium previously. Besides that albino Oscar, but we'll get to him shortly. Temperature of the aquarium runs at around 25 to 26 degrees Celsius, depending on the temperature outside, because if it's really cold, the heat pump struggles to keep the temperature at 26, so sometimes the aquarium temperatures can drop to 25. I technically prefer 25, but for 26 is better for some fish that are behind you and a few others that we have out here as well. If you don't know, I heat the aquarium gallery. I don't heat individual aquariums because it seems to be more economically friendly. We have thousands of gallons in a small area. It's cheaper to heat the tanks individually, but that's something I'm changing here in the near future. Is I'm taking all of the aquariums and I'm going to be heating the tanks individually, sort of, just so we can have it a little cooler in here. Because if you don't know, I sometimes wear tank tops and stuff because it gets really warm out here. pH, of course, it's 7.6, 7.8. It's been like that in all of my aquariums for many, many years, but it's starting to change. Before we get to why it's changing, we should probably talk about hardness. Hard enough to stand on. I am on a well. I don't have to add any additives to the tanks, and I don't really believe in manipulating your water parameters simply because you got to think about what your fish might prefer. And I think it's common sense. Imagine you read a book and these wild-caught fish prefer a pH of 6.4, or at least that's what they are in the wild. In the aquarium hobby, most fish are being tank bred at higher pH in the alkalinity levels. However, if we were to try to take a higher pH like mine, 7.6, 7.8, with really hard water, and lower it, it's going to bounce back up next time I would do a water change if I remember to treat the water first, or then it's going to go back down and up and down and up and down. What do you think they prefer? You chasing ideal or consistent, not perfect, but consistent? I've always chased consistency and simplicity over ideal. Even when breeding discus, stingrays, you name it, we've done a tremendous amount over the past 17 years, documented right here on the channel. Go ahead and fact check me, it's all there. In water that might not have been ideal, but it was consistent. The only way for me to kind of check things and lower pH or lower hardness is to pre-filter on the way to the aquarium, and that's something that I'd like to talk about as well, is that the tank behind you, which is a 180 gallon aquarium, and no, you don't know what's in it, the 375 that's right here, The 2000, as well as the 700, are all connected now and all on their own automated water changes. That is going through an RO system that is also getting heated and a bunch of other goodies. And I'll teach you and show you how I built my automated water change system, which is abundantly easy. It's a mix of auto water changes and drip system, but it's all heated and filtered first. Very fun, very cost effective. And for me, well, it's one of those things I don't have to do anymore. The only thing that I gotta do, and I know that fish keepers hate doing it, we all don't like doing it, is feed the fish. So one thing that I do need to do with these guys if I'm gonna feed them is I gotta take their lid and move it completely aside, because if I just take my hand and try to slip it under, well, you can see what they're going to attempt to do to me. The downside is they're looking at me. Ah, damn, me, but my hand's technically, oh, careful. This is just some chopped up shrimp. I'll feed them a couple times a day. For the most part, I'll feed pellets, but of course on video, the white pieces of flesh show up a little bit better. Man, what an awesome aquarium. I love that we now have a scaped OSCAR aquarium that we can look at and enjoy and show everybody that, yeah, lots of OSCARs can live together. They can be in perfect shape. It can be a scaped tank. It's got to be big enough, the right flow and environment, and everything would be fine. So now obviously we have to talk about what's next. What's next is arguably boring and debatably exciting. Arguably boring because everything's mostly done. I'm not going to rescape it. We're not going to change anything. There's not really much more to add. The scape is perfect, yet incredibly delicate. The plants can be tipped over like this. The wood can be flicked over like this. The substrate I have not touched. It's literally a dusting of gravel. But you'll notice that the OSCARs and the flow in the aquarium are balanced so perfectly that while the plants undulate and the OSCARs seem happy, they're not making a tremendous mess out of anything. The only thing that I have to do now is make sure, and I'm gonna have to call him it, White Boy Rick gets some buddies. He's the only white guy in that tank, and I think that since all the other OSCARs are ganged up, I've got to get a couple more albinos or leucistic. And it's unfortunate that I'm creating what I believe to be the best OSCAR aquarium on the internet. Of course I think that. You've got to think that about your tanks too. Like, wow, I got the best fish tank. But I would love to have some blood red OSCARs, some lemons, you name it. There's so many designer OSCARs out there that I've never been able to keep and rarely have ever even seen in person that I would love to have. And maybe sometime in the near future we can kind of dive into that. But what you see is kind of what's available in my area. Obviously, I'm not going to buy some little tiny albinos. I'm going to go store to store till I find some rescues and I'll grab them. Because OSCARs tend to be dropped off at the store the most. Which is unfortunate, but it happens. I think OSCARs are one of the most rewarding fish. And at one point in my hobby, OSCARs were the only thing that I ever kept. I had 6 55-gallon aquariums and an OSCAR in each one, and it was one of my favorite moments of the aquarium hobby. I've said favorite moments of the aquarium hobby, but to be fair, I've had a lot. But I think that's why I set this tank up the way I did and tried to make it as beautiful as I have. Simply because I think OSCARs deserve a little bit more attention, and I wanted to prove and show that yes, we can have beautiful tanks with OSCARs. Oh, I'm also going to add in my Bisher, but that's a topic for another day. Hope you guys enjoyed my OSCAR aquarium. If you did, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already, and let me know which aquarium you want me to reveal to you next, because I think it's quite obvious that I've been up to no good. I've been up to good, and the tanks are awesome. The OSCAR aquarium right now is my favorite aquarium, but I'm working on something else that's going to be my new favorite aquarium. However, when we reveal what's going on in the 2000, that's my favorite aquarium. Or you might be. Let me know in the comment section below. Hope you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.